influence and lobby the government around allowing us to do that as well. And working with the government, we've been feeding into their domestic abuse strategy to say that we would like to pilot some things as well. So there's a lot. That's a key thing that's close to my heart that I want to drive through in the next 12 months as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Steph. I'm going to kick off on housing repairs, a subject I've become obsessed with over the years. And first of all, it sounds very interesting, the proposal. Personally, I'm delighted to see an attempt to bring everything in. I just wanted to ask a few questions really about how that might look. And so first of all, a few years ago when we looked at this committee at the repairs contracts and having the comparable data so that you could see performance differences between SBS and MERS, when the south of the borough comes in, will that be into SBS as a whole? Is there any mechanism for keeping bits separate so they can be compared, or anything like
that? It will be going to SBS as a whole. What we've looked is, and that's the non-rechargeable works. So chargeable works, we've got separate contracts for those that have come out already. We're tendering, a tender process is going out for those, because we don't want SBS to be able to fail. So what we need to do is make sure they're doing the basics around that. So those more complicated things and chargeable repairs, we're still going to be doing on shorter term contracts, with the aim that if SBS can deliver, we'll feed it into them over a period of time. So we're not giving them the whole shebang as such. We're giving them the tenants repairs and then communal repairs, but rechargeable works and specialised stuff is still going to stay on separate contracts until we feel that SBS or SBS are able to do that. So I think it's really key though, and you're right, because they're doing half a borough. And we do need to make sure that they don't fail and they get it right. So there's a lot of work that Dave and his team are doing at the moment, working with Lynn at SBS to make sure we get it right from the go-get. So we're going to be looking at how the metrics of how we measure them, those KPIs, what those service level agreements look like, and feed into that as well. I think the other key thing is about the residents themselves, and we've extended the membership of the core group repairs meeting. So each quarter we have a meeting where we scrutinise the contractors. And we've extended that, and it used to be just myself chairing it, and we'd have representatives from Tenants Council and Homeowners Council, but we've extended the membership that every area housing forum can nominate a representative as well. And our first meeting of the new format is actually tomorrow evening, so it'll be really interesting to see how that goes around that, and having more residents actually feeding into the mix around that as well. And I think sort of going forward with the changing repairs contracts, that's going to become even more key as well, to have that resident scrutiny, as well as myself and officers actually sort of saying this is what we want. It's really good to hear what residents want from it as well.
Good. And you talked about TUPE. Just wondering, what the cost implications are, for example, of bringing people in-house, and whether we'll be able to guarantee that they come in not TUPE'd in on the MERS terms,
no,
but
they're going to be on
the Southwark terms.
And it has to be on the Southwark terms.
And also on that, it sounds like there's a, as the handover happens, that's I think a huge logistical task there to switch from one provider to another. I know they do an absolute massive amount of jobs per week and so on. So is there any sort of transition period? Is there how will that be handled to try and keep it smooth?
I think what we're doing at the moment, I think we are, unfortunately, as side effects of MERS saying they don't want to carry on, we are seeing a deterioration around that, and they are losing staff. They are losing staff because of it. So where possible, we're asking SBS to cover where they are at the moment and then increase that capacity. But I do think, I think the DLO is the right way to go. It really is. There is a risk. It's not risk-free at all. There is a risk because we have to support SBS, but there's also there's a risk to them not having the capacity to be able to do it, but we will help them support that. But there's also a risk to the cost of the HRA, because we will have to use HRA money until they're up and running to be able to support themselves, to maybe sort of fill in any financial gaps around that as well. Which we do at the moment, but it may be a larger proportion initially. But the hope is that once they are up and running, that they, as a DLO and as a traded standard service, they can then, once they get it right here, they can then go and sort of tender for other jobs outside of Southwark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually then raise finances themselves that way.
Great, thank you. It's very exciting.
It is exciting, yeah. I think it is exciting to see how it can shape, yeah.
So I've got Ben and Martin already indicated. Stay on housing repairs for now, if that's all right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is really exciting. I think there's a real opportunity here, and it's good to know that the risks are being looked at. The risks must be considerable in handling such a big project. One of the things which has come up a few times, which Tom alluded to, is the value for money on repairs, and I'm not sure we ever quite got to the bottom of why, for example, TMOs seem to get better value for money, but there's a few theories floating around, and one of them I think is around that local connection they have with the area, the same people doing the same kind of jobs, and I wonder whether that's something that you're looking at for how SPS could operate. So, for example, because if it's one central room controlling everything, or whether you can look at clusters where you've got the same people doing similar jobs in areas. I know that Mia's had areas, but they were quite large areas, and I don't know if you're looking at a possible kind of radical reorganisation to learn from the TMO value for money. Because economies of scale don't seem to work.
I'm always up for anything radical. I think at the moment, you start with a blank sheet of paper, don't you, and you look at all those permutations and ideas around that. And then coming back to what you said about the TMOs, you're right. And I don't, sometimes you wonder if it's economies of scale that they can actually do that. But there's a lot we can learn from TMOs, and not just on the repair side either. And I do say to officers a lot of the time, when results come back from TMOs and what they're doing, what are they doing that we're not? What are they doing better than we can do, and how can we learn from them? And I think that you have to be prepared to do that and look at it. So I think not just in repairs, but if you look at satisfaction around things, and actually most satisfaction scores do boil down actually to repairs and the service they get. There is a correlation, I think, around that. If if you're happy with a repair service and that standard of upkeep, then you're pretty satisfied. If you've got a repair that's going on and on and on, you're asking for that satisfaction survey, there is a correlation. So I think yes, you're right, and I think we should be learning from those TMOs. We've got Leather Market, JMB. I think they're a really good one we could learn from as well. So yeah, I'm open to anything and being radical. I think it is a really good opportunity to basically start from scratch and have a look around that.
Of course, Ben has asked my two principal questions, which is fine, so I can progress it. So, of course, you said that officers have indicated to you, give you some indication as to why TMO perform better in terms of value for money and response times. Okay, can you share with us, if it's not secret, of course, why they perform better?
I think this is what we need to drill down on, because when we do our satisfaction reports, we use what's called a STAR survey, which is like an industry standard, and I've actually asked officers to go back and have a deeper dive and actually ask some more sort of in-depth questions around that. So and sometimes there is are you comparing apples with pears type thing as well. But I think the thing around TMOs and what TMOs get right is that because they're quite small, they have that economy of scale, and they are local, they are localised, so they know their little patch or their bigger patch, depending on how big the TMO is. Because we have TMOs that range from Leather Market, which is the largest self-financing TMO in the country, to a block. Like Kensington Park House in James's Ward is just one block, but that is a TMO. So I think there are variations around that. So it's about that familiarity, I think, is around that as well. So I do think there is something to be said about actually working within a small patch as well, and getting to know those estates and what the problems and issues, and maybe sort of preempting them before they happen as well. Yeah.
If I may, Chair, just to follow up. So I want to first of all signal that I'm on the board of my local TMO Browning Estate, and secondly, of course, I've expressed at another place in OSC that the current proposal has too many risks for it. I don't believe we should actually do it. So I put my card on the table, so we're quite clear about that. So I want to just press you further on value for money, because of course the problem we have with apples and pears, of course, is that a TMO, we will look at a profit and loss sheet, and we don't have an equivalent, he says, in the public sector. And I'm wondering, in order to assess performance, would you bring the two close together so the accounting looks similar, so we can begin to assess whether or not we are getting genuine value for money. And secondly, if I may, Chair, just to follow up on response times because of locality. If the TMOs are teaching a lesson in terms of the structure of these big contracts, that they should be localised, small teams or whatever, is that not a model that you want to pursue anyway, with the opportunity presented by this company withdrawing the contract?
Yeah. So I mean, if I come to your first one first, as I said, it is about having that blank sheet of paper and looking at our wish list and what we'd like to see and how we want that to perform, and actually having that service level agreement and those key performance indicators around that. And value for money has to be one of those. And I think when you've got an external company and they bid on a tender for a price and around that, so it's a lot harder then to actually ascertain that value for money because they won the bid on that tender. I think when you're doing it in-house, it's a lot easier then to see that. And I think one of the things we're really keen to, and I'm keen to see around it, is that we reduce that reliance on the HRA and actually sort of filling the gaps in. And as we get that value for money, as they become more confident, as they become more sure of what they're doing and actually become more productive and more effective, that they start to bring money in themselves by, actually bidding outside of the borough as well. So, which will help us because there'll be less reliance on our HRA.
Can I, if I may, again, I've got to keep pressing you, but of course, you answered the question, and it's fine. Simply that if we are aware that TMOs, and I can cite my own TMO, are earning as a result of it, the council says you have X number of repairs. These are the values of those repairs, and this is what we'll give you for this year. And the TMO consistently, ever since its existence, has performed better than the council's expectation by a significant amount. Okay, it implies that the arrangement in terms of repairs within the TMO is infinitely more efficient in the public purse than the current system of a centralised contracts. And so I would keep pressing on the point. Well,
so you're asking, but are we going to be just? I mean, with SBS, we are bringing it in house, so we're not going to be doing it for
I understand that.
Around that. I suppose the difference between council and TMOs are obviously TMOs have that financial regulation through the FCA as well, so they have to produce that financial accountability through that, which is different to what we do as a local authority. I think at the moment we're not quite at that stage where we can have those same sort of types of value for money because we're in such a different position. Working towards it is a good way to look for it. I don't think it can happen overnight. I don't think SBS are quite there at the moment, but it is a challenge we can give them to say that in X amount of time, this is where we like to see you to be. I mean, this is going to be a trial. This is a 12-month trial for them. To see whether they can manage with it. We have got some backup call-out frameworks that if they can't manage, but we can call on, and that's the reason why we're not doing the rechargeable works or the specialised works within that contract as well, because we don't want them to fail. So I think we need to give them a bit of hand-holding and support, because at first, because they are taking on a lot more than they're doing at the moment. And I think we have to make sure we play our part in making it a success as well as they do. So I think at the beginning there will be a lot more support and help and guidance around it, and hopefully as time goes on it'll become a bit more slick and more value for money in that way. I don't think we're at that stage yet where they can do it, personally. I don't.
Yep, going to move on. I mean, on that, I think it's worth saying, for the record on this, that I don't think they can be directly compared. I don't think that the story is as simple as that. I think TMOs are very good at presenting themselves as well, and also the sheer scale of Southwark housing distribution. There's very few organisations anywhere that you compare to even half the borough in terms of performance. So, credit where it's due and all that, but I'm sure there is stuff, and we'll continue to learn from TMOs where it's relevant. Rather, you had a housing repairs service question.
Yes, with all these kind of works being brought in-house, I'm just wondering how joined up we are as a council, in the sense that we have a huge push towards apprenticeships, and I know a large chunk of that is actually to do with construction and repairs and all of those types of applicable skills. And to what extent will those apprentices be able to take their skills and actually bring them to support these efforts?
I think it gives more opportunity because we're expanding. I think it actually gives more opportunity for those apprenticeships to actually stay on rather than leaving and going elsewhere. We're working through all of that. We're working through the staffing issues at the moment because at the moment we don't know how many of MERS operatives want to come over to us as well. So this is part of the negotiations and we're talking around that. I think we've got to be really clear is that up until October we still have that contract with MERS and MERS still need to deliver on that. But that's a different story, and my concerns around that are sort of for the next 6 months around that. But I think, yes, there will be more scale for apprentices, and those apprentices we take on, there should be more opportunity for them to stay as well. But also, by actually extending that contract, it also gives SBS more chance to take on more apprenticeships as well, and actually maybe extend the number we do. I think if you look at housing, the number of apprenticeships that we provide are larger than most of the departments within the council, only because, again, the scale of things that we do. But yeah, there will definitely be more opportunities, but there will also be opportunities to stay and progress, and it's about the progression, isn't it, around it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And more women apprenticeships as well.
Sorry?
And more women. I do challenge actually on our, when we look at the major works ones and we look at that, I do challenge the breakdown and how many women apprenticeships we're offering in those as well.
Yes, well, everything needs to go through our equality filter, and we should. Sorry, I had one more question actually, which was related to this, which is actually about transparency, and actually our need, I believe, for us to be a lot more transparent about, you know, who the apprenticeships and jobs, etc., are going to. Are we doing well from the equalities perspective, and also just I think from actually the performance in terms of repairs. I'd like to see us, you know, be a lot more transparent about what's going on there.
I think that sort of touches into Fiona's portfolio more around the actual. It does because it's the workplace strategy, the workforce strategy, which comes out every October, and that goes to cabinet every October. So it is all broken down in there as well. So the last one did show yeah.
Okay, moving on from repairs, who'd like to kick us off on the next topic? Jane.
Thanks, Chad, and thanks, Steph, for coming today. You mentioned at the start the sort of subject of homelessness, and I, when I'm going about from home to work to my ward to Tooley Street, I walk, and I walk in a relatively small part of Southwark. And we could go 5 minutes in pretty much any direction from here, and I could show you, I'm sure you've seen, there are people within 5 minutes from where we're sitting that are homeless, they're living in tents, and so it is a really serious problem in this borough. And so obviously I think we're all really pleased with the grant funding which was awarded for the homelessness prevention work which you mentioned, but I just wondered if you could talk a bit more about that in terms of are we starting to see any results from that? Yes.
So there's two different strands of homelessness. So you've got street homelessness, and then you've got evictions and homelessness through other areas. And the prevention work, the Trailblazer money with £1 million we got from that from the government was for the second side. However, we also successfully bid for £363,000 to help with rough sleeping, tackling rough sleeping, working on a no first night out model. So our contract is with St Mungo's, and they are out every night. They know where every rough sleeper is. I think the issue we find is we have seen an increase, but every London borough is seeing an increase in that, and then there is I think there is a correlation between what's happening politically around it as well. There really is, and I think we've got to be, if you look up until 2010, homelessness started to go down. In the last 7 years, it has been on the increase. So in terms of rough sleeping, we have contracts at Mungo's. They go out every night, they work, and they know who the people are and where they stay. The issue we have sometimes, and what is really tricky sometimes, is that some people don't want that help. They don't want the help, and it's around. It can take some time to gain their trust. But the teams don't give up. They're out all the time, and they're working and working and working. And there does come a point when actually someone says, actually, yeah, I do need help and I do need support. But it's about not giving up on them and working around that as well. So we have got that funding and that work that's been done around street homelessness. The bigger issue is the hidden homelessness and the unseen homelessness around that, and also around actual evictions and people. And if you look at the three main causes of homelessness in the borough, 30% comes from evictions from family members or friends. So it's normally when parents will evict grown-up children and say, off you go to get yourself somewhere to stay now. You can't really stay here anymore, we're overcrowded. The second highest, which is really alarming, is evictions from private rented sector. We are seeing an increase of those, and that I think is a direct result of the benefits cap, the change of the freeze for local housing allowance, and obviously universal credit as well, because we are seeing that as well. And then the third one is around domestic abuse. About 12% of homelessness cases are through domestic abuse, so they're our top three. Now, what used to happen if somebody was evicted around from a private rented sector, you get what's called a Section 21 notice, and they used to be issued 28 days beforehand, and you had a very small window of time to help and support people and find where they are. What the Homelessness Reduction Act is saying, which comes into effect in April, but we've adopted since October, is that you work with people within 56 days, so we start working with them earlier. Every single person who crosses that door that we have a homelessness duty to has a personal plan. And that's their plan, and it's specific to them, and it's our partner agencies, and we work with so many different partner agencies, also have access to that plan as well, and they can update it and support it. So it's working around that plan around them, and we are seeing, we have prevented, the number of actual people becoming homeless is reducing because of the prevention work. We're doing a lot of mediation, so in terms of evictions from parents or family members, there's a mediation service. We have shelter based in Bournemouth Road, who work so that if somebody wants an immediate review of their application or their decision, it's done. It's an impartial, independent review, but they're based there 5 days a week, which is a unique service. We're the first borough to have the shelter to actually say they wanted to work with us on that. And we have Solus Women's Aid there 5 days a week as well. So there's a lot of work around that as well. So I think we've embraced it, and we're actually, I think it's a really good thing that we have started working around the Homelessness Reduction Act way before we're meant to, because it gets us ahead again. It means that the support we're giving our residents is there already in place. But there are obviously, there are, and it's nice to have had the money, but there is a cost to it, because what we're trying to do is find places for people not to rely on paid nightly bed and breakfast accommodation, but to look for good quality accommodation for people, and there is a cost to that as well. We have a situation where 3/4 of our landlords won't take tenants on benefits. You've got situations where people are being evicted because landlords realise they can get £2,000 or more a month for rent, and the maximum anyone can get on the local housing allowance, depending on where it's is £1,300 a month. So there's a big discrepancy around that, and so it really is looking at talking to people and saying to them what doing that intervention, doing that advocacy, and actually doing that advocacy with landlords as well, and trying to see if we can maintain tenancies for longer with them as well. But it's a tough battle, because it's the amount of people coming through the doors is increasing. It is, and and homelessness has to be tackled nationally. We can do what we can as a borough, but there has to be national policy around this. I think it's ludicrous around universal credit that it gets paid directly to the person. It should, rather than the landlord, because people, we know the Smith Institute report, Safer Houses, showed that under universal credit, the majority of people are getting into arrears, and it's taking and straight away. What happened? I know they've reduced the weeks. Great, the period of a week where you don't get any universal credit, but still to wait 4 weeks, 5 weeks for any payments is just awful. So there are challenges, and there continue to be challenges, but I think having the work we're doing around it is helping. It will never solve it. But there is good work being done around it.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Okay, next topic. Anyone to speak on?
Oh, it's okay. I actually had a quick follow-up, sorry, to something that you mentioned there, and obviously that you mentioned in your opening remarks. You mentioned that one of your priorities is going to be doing more to tackle homelessness, which is linked to domestic abuse. And I just wondered if you can tell us a bit more about kind of what your plans are in that area.
It really annoys me that whenever we see somebody come through our doors who's homeless through domestic abuse, and it's not always women, but majority of the time it's women, and often there are children, that somebody's been through all this trauma, all this stress, and then are made homeless and have to go through all the stress of homelessness, well, more often than not, the perpetrator stays in place. And my view is that we should be evicting the perpetrator. Where it's safe for the survivor to stay, they stay. There will always be cases where they have to move, and there's a pan-London approach around that. But I think where it is, if it is deemed that, that Marac deemed that it's safe for somebody to stay in there where they are, that you evict the perpetrator. If it's a joint tenancy, give a tenancy to the survivor. If it's the perpetrator's got a tenancy, you take the tenancy off them and grant a new tenancy to the survivor. If it's a case where they can't stay or they don't want to stay there, still evict the perpetrator, because we've got a housing waiting list of 11,500 people, and give it back to somebody who needs it. And that's what we're looking at. So we're looking at how we can do that. Wales Assembly are bringing it in from April that it's that they're going to look at doing that. I think we can do it for our antisocial behaviour clause in our leases. That's what we're looking at. And I do think, not in our leases, in our tenancies, and I do think that in future tenancies, if we look at redoing tenancies, we need to put that in as a clause as well. But that's really where I am, where I want to go, is to say that if you commit domestic abuse, you're not welcome. You then risk losing your tenancy, and actually then the survivor can stay in the home without having to go through all that stress and trauma of going through a homelessness process and living in temporary accommodation and all that stress and strain that comes with that on top of everything else. So yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you.
Will you also have a look at whether or not that would constitute like the chain? You can transfer once.
I don't want it to. Yeah, I don't think it should.
So it'd be a shame if
I know.
It's just to flag up.
There's a lot around things like that which I think are really unfair. When that's something again that it shouldn't be succession, because it's not succession as such. And the other thing that worries me around domestic abuse, and I know the housing planning act has sort of been parked, but there is one part of it that could be brought in really easily and really quickly, and that's the end of lifetime tenancies. And I think again, there is a case to be made that in cases of domestic abuse, if someone has to move because of that, that they shouldn't lose their lifetime tenancy as well. Yeah.
And just before I come to Martin, on the Housing and Planning Act, what change have we seen in the last year since we saw you last? Have they got any more bits through that we're worried about?
No. So I think last time I saw you, we'd just been really successful in actually lobbying that pay to stay had gone and been kicked into long grass. No, nothing else has been brought in, but Brexit has taken over everything. And and what they call now housing communities and local government now. Have basically said, I think in terms of the forced void levy, that's not coming in anytime soon. Right to buy for housing associations, they've sort of doing a 5-year pilot in the Midlands for that. So again, that's not going to come in anytime soon. I get the impression that because it was, the child of Cameron and Osborne, and the government are probably trying to distance themselves from their policies, that they're probably going to, it may quietly be dropped, but I don't think we should be complacent, because they could bring it any time. It's still law. It is still a law. It was passed. It's got royal statute. So it is, I don't think we should be sort of, saying, it's never going to happen, because it is on the statute books. So it could be brought in at any time, but at the moment there are no rumblings about it happening. My worry is that the end of lifetime tenancies is something that they could bring in very easily, because there's no burden on the government to do that. That lies with us as local authorities.
Thank you. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just bring up the issue of leaseholders? Okay, so the leaseholder management company, and of course ensuring that leaseholder charges are made more transparent. Okay, can you just update us progress made so far?
I suppose when I first took over housing, you looked at the notices that came out with Section 20s and that. It was really, it was like tertiary to Section 2A of the Act or whatever. I've sat down and we've made them a lot easier to understand. So actually, I think when you get Section 20 notes, what people want to say is, well, how much is it going to cost me and what is being done? And it used to be towards the back of the notice of the documentation. That is now at the front, so people can see that as well. We've set up my co-owners in the blue, so there's a shop there in blue, but there's also an independent board. And that's made up of a mixture of leaseholders who are leaseholders in the borough, and some industry people who work in the industry. And what they do is they're working there, and they've got sort of a work pattern, a sort of a work schedule, things they want to look at on behalf of leaseholders as well. My Southwark Homeowners Agency are doing really well. What we're doing really, really well is we're doing a lot of advocacy around things, and the satisfaction rates coming from that are really, really good. They're, you know, in the high 90% every month around that, because they're, regards to the outcome, they're dealing with it, and if it's closed down within 24 days at the moment within that. So it's really working. It's only early days because it's only been running for 12 months, and it's really only really the last 6 months it's been really taking off. But the early signs and the feedback we're getting from leaseholders is they like the service, they like the fact that there's a specialist service for them, and they like the fact that it's tailored to them as well. There are lots of things that I'm expecting the Homeowners Board to challenge us on, and I know that service charges are one of the things, and the Section 20 is how we do that, and value for money is one of the things that they're looking at. And it's really good because they're independent. I meet with the chair every quarter, so I have a meeting with the chair every quarter. And what they also do is they're working really well with Homeowners Council and LAS 2000, so they're looking at it in the round and all those issues as well. So they're not in conflict. They're not in conflict with them. They're helping to support them as well. So I think in terms of leasehold satisfaction, it's never been great, but we've increased it from sort of the mid-40s up to 52% within a year, which might not sound a lot, but in terms of moving in the right direction, it's getting there. It needs to be higher, it does, but it is a start, and hopefully as this embeds, it will, that satisfaction level will go up. Yeah.
Thank you. For me, I assume at some point you'll produce a report for us.
Yeah.
And just to follow up on the question again on leaseholders, this is the common story that the charges leaseholders are paying are sometimes so exorbitant that many have to take out large loans. Okay, why are charges so high when compared to the private sector?
I think a lot of our leasehold charge have been high because of the Warm, Dry and Safe programme and the works we were doing on that, and obviously within that Section 20, you know, within the lease you have to pay your attributable costs, and they are only their attributable costs. But because we've been doing a lot of work, I mean, you've got to think, you know, in 2010 our decent home standard was at 54%. It's now 95.02%. So in that period of time, which shows there's been a lot of work being done. Now the Warm, Dry and Safe programme has finished now. It's coming to the end. There's a couple of more states like Tustin that still need to be done. So now going forward, any works that need to be doing are more sort of like cyclical works around, and quality home investment programme works where the cost shouldn't be anywhere near as much as the major works. So I think it's because of the way that obviously we had to bring our homes up to a decent standard, and there are the large charges around that. So in the last, you know, so in the last 7 years, leaseholders have seen those high charges because of just basically the scale of works we've had to do to bring them up. Properties up to those decent standards around that. If you see sort of where we were, where it was in 2010 to where it is now, that increase in percentage just shows the amount of work that's been done on that. Going forward, they should be just regular sort of, you know, I don't, you know, we should be anticipating bills of that amount anymore. We really shouldn't.
I'm smiling, and I'm sure leaseholders in here are enjoying that response. But of course, if I may, whilst we acknowledge that those major programmes were expensive, the question that arises is that the private sector appear to have similar programmes, and I'm now reminded of both the church commissioners, which is in the ward that I live in, who have similar programmes but appear to be much cheaper but achieve similar outcomes. And I wonder when you're receiving these contracts and these values, okay, what are your benchmarks, and are you convinced the council's not been overcharged?
Well, I'm sure Dave will come in on that, won't you? They're not being overcharged. No.
Okay.
Because I don't do the contracts and tendering.
Okay.
Yeah. The Warm, Dry, Safe was mainly carried out under a partnering scheme, which was tendered. It went through the process of the tender. The costs are really competitive. The issue is about, as the council has said, the standard, the amount of work we had to carry out on those properties. They were pure enveloping works for those buildings, so windows, roofs, outside. So, and don't forget the underinvestment over numerous years before 2006 took us to a place where we had to make major investment for that 5 years. We're now in a process now where we have an asset management strategy that leaseholders can look and see where they are in the programme. We have a programme of like 5 years, 7 years cyclical debt programmes, where before that was sort of non-existent. So there was a lot of catch-up to do. It seemed expensive, but the actual price of work was very competitive.
Seemed expensive, but it was actually
I think
competitive.
also, Martin, also, very much, we also, within that, there was all the fire safety work that we had to do
Indeed.
as well.
Acknowledge.
Around that, yeah, which is like £60 million on that. So, I mean, we spent £500 million on the water drive to make those include, to make them up to standard. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Next topic. Anyone want to come in? I've got James and Rada. James?
I think I know how you might answer this, but I'd like to ask anyway. There are a couple of councillors that I've spoken to who have said that they are now dealing with sort of higher volumes of casework for properties that are housing association as opposed to council properties. And I'm personally not in that situation, but there is nonetheless a particular housing association that I get regular complaints from residents about, and it's obviously quite frustrating because there's very little I can do beyond apply kind of political pressure. What's your view on the extent to which we should, as a local authority, be trying to hold the housing associations that we, for obvious reasons, welcome, and we want them to build homes in our borough, we want them to manage them, but do you think we should be doing more to hold them to a decent standard?
It's really tricky because they're separate companies in their own entity, so we don't have any sort of what we can do, and which we do is I've met with many of the chief execs, and I know that Jerry, when she said, I'm sure Michael, when he joins in a couple of weeks, has a relationship with CEOs on there, so we can apply pressure that way. But it's really hard because they are separate entities and they run their own companies around that. So you can't actually interfere. But what we can do, and what I have done, and what we do is where we have concerns, we do flag them up and we meet with the CEOs. For example, if you look at the issues around Solomon's Passage in Peckham Rye, there's an issue where actually what happened was where the buildings were built, they were built on a timber frame structure, and there are major problems around there. Lots of inputs to the fact that they've got to knock 2 of the blocks down. They've had to move all the residents out around that, and the company that built the timber frames has gone bust, so they can't claim anything back from them. But when that happened, all councillors, Jerry at the time and myself, met with the CEO and the teams from that housing association. They were telling us what their plans were. We were challenging them and saying, well, have you done this? You need to do this, you need to do that. What's your communication plan? What are you doing to help support the residents? How are you supporting them? What compensation are you giving them? All of those sorts of things. So we can do that, and we do challenge them. But we can't meddle, if that makes sense. We can't dictate and say, you have to do this and you have to do that. But what we can do is we can try and influence. Yeah.
And you're not at a point where you would, and I guess it's a good thing if housing associations overall are performing well, and so you wouldn't be in this position. But if the example that I'm thinking of is replicated by the same housing association over and over, could you envisage a point at which you say, right, we're not going to invite you to bid to build new homes in our borough because there are plenty of other housing associations that are meeting the standards that we would expect?
I think you can, but I think some of the issues we're finding are where they're not new buildings, they're older buildings as well. But I think housing associations themselves are going through a weird time at the moment. If you look, there's a lot of mergers because the way the market is at the moment, the way housing is at the moment, some of the smaller and more medium-sized ones can't continue as they are on their own, so they're merging. And I personally see that there'll be more and more mergers. In fact, you'll have fewer housing associations, but more less housing associations, but they'll be larger. And I don't know whether there's pros and cons around that, aren't there? There are there are the fact that there is more financial clout if you've got a bigger company and that you can actually look at that. But I think some of the smaller housing associations are struggling at the moment, and some of the things that are coming up, and I know I get casework in my own ward through housing associations, and some of that I think is attributable to the fact that they're feeling the strain at the moment as well. Not to say that it's acceptable, we should let it happen, but around that as well. So I think actually the actual way that it's used to have lots of housing associations do different things, and their nature of business is changing a bit as well around things, and so you'll see just probably only the bigger ones surviving.
I wonder on that whether we probably all get casework, we probably all email similar housing associations directly, and because we wouldn't do it through members' inquiries because it's external, I just wonder whether there's any way of tracking it. I don't want to make extra work for anyone, but if we could see, to help the council to see any patterns here, because I'm not going to name any housing associations on camera because I think Debbie would probably kill me, but there are ones that come up again and again and again, and it's not just in my ward. I hear the same names.
I'm not naming any, but I can tell you the ones that come in my inbox from people, members again and again and again. And
it would be good to see if that's a general trend throughout the borough. And yes, Ben.
Yeah, I agree, and I think although they're separate companies, the council wields huge influence because there's this huge council house building programme, and there's lots of things going through the planning department, and there are housing associations within my ward that are not doing a good service and keep being chosen as the partner for new blocks that go up, and you do wonder if there's maybe they're great in other wards and it's just a problem block, but you do wonder if actually we should be doing a better review of some of these housing associations and that going into the process of selecting housing association partners.
So you're very into the region bit on the partnership as well.
I always do with you.
Yeah, but
just your personal views of
my personal views. I think it is tough, and I think you're right about the influence, and where possible we will put influence on them. And yes, you're right. And more casework. I think the nature of the thing is because actually when you're looking at social housing associations are a big provider of that. Then the nature is that casework will come back around housing associations. So yeah. Is it that we just do it on a as in I might get an inquiry from somebody and they'll email me and say ex-housing association, who's the best person to contact, and I'll just whiz back an email to that person and say this is the CEO or this is that person with their email address, and it's like, oh thanks Steph, and around that. But you're right, is there a bigger piece of work? Probably there is, but how would that look, and what would that do with that? It's looking like we're meddling as such or telling them what to do. But I think if you look at housing in the main, yes, we are relying on housing associations. I think in the future, more and more, we're going to be looking at that. If we really want to fix the housing crisis, housing associations have a massive role to play in that. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to sit with you, Tom, and see what we could do.
Yeah, I think it's worth something. I haven't quite got a recommendation here because I think it's something maybe we can help with rather than just send you off to do it.
Can I add, Chair?
Yeah,
I think you're right. That we need to be. It's quite obvious. I'm straining not to mention. I'm straining not to. But it is a recurring theme.
Yeah.
So we're taking people off our waiting list, and they're going on to becoming less secure tenancies with a housing association, okay? And at that point we are effectively washing our hands of them. Okay? And of course most people on the housing list want to become council tenants for the assured secure tenancy. That's what they really want. Okay? It does seem unusual though that you talk about the influence, okay, but you need to describe what form that influence would take, because it's quite obvious. most of us here would welcome that influence being applied.
Yeah.
Because it's quite obvious that the repairs cases I've seen, which have been outstanding for years or more, or the numbers of visits where the contractor doesn't have the right tools, are just common themes, you see. It's common themes. And it's almost as if it's a perfunctory exercise because the association believes that they're impervious to our influence. And I suppose, how can we change that relationship? That the associations are aware that we may take action, whether it be some sort of class action, who knows, against a particular association where you've got stat which indicates that the levels of complaints are more than 10% above council standards, for example, as a benchmark, for example.
I mean, if I look at the things that come in my inbox, I do get members emailing me asking how to approach a housing association and issues around it, but they're not as high as the emails I get around council services, if that makes sense. So it was a hard one to measure, and I think also there's also the case that if you've got tenants in housing association properties who aren't council tenants, they won't be getting in touch with the council about their issues. They'll go directly to their housing association, won't they, as well? So we may not know about them either. Unless they've actually then said, well, I've had enough and I'm going to go to my ward council about this, or my MP, or So there will be residents who will just do it through their housing association and might be banging their head against the wall because there isn't a resolution around it. So we don't know those who they are or how to capture that. So I think you're right, Tom. There is something to do, but what it would look like, I'm not sure.
I don't think we'd think of it as any kind of evidence about their performance. It would be just a tracker for us, especially. I think with the mergers, I'm getting more and more along the lines of, there's no one I can contact anyone. Can't get an answer back from what is now a huge organisation, and perhaps they could consider it a helpful look from us to identify any teething problems they might have as these mergers go through. They could. Okay. We've got about 5 minutes till we're going to bring this to an end. But Ra, do you have another question? Any more?
Yes, it's actually a piece of casework. But no, it's not. It's about refugees and our commitment that we made, I believe, in December 2016 to house 5 refugee families a year. And I just kind of want an update as to where we've got with that, if we did it for the last year. And I think that there was a sort of multi-agency team that was going to be formed, a lead officer was going to be hired, and I just want to know what the picture is in terms of our work with refugee families.
Paul, you worked on that, didn't you, as well, around it, and Stephen? Yeah, Stephen. Yeah, you are the direct person.
It is me. We are signing an agreement with the Salvation Army, who agreed to provide the properties on Friday, I believe. So we're then ready to go. The last few months has been a period of putting in place everything we need to do to be able to accept those families. So once that is done, it's then just a question of what we're allocated by central government, because obviously it's in their hands. So it should be very, very soon that those families...
We were waiting for a while for the central government to actually give us the okay to do it. So though we said we were going to do it, we had to then get permission from the central government to do it, and that took a while.
There's an officer in my team who is responsible for that, and amongst some other things, and a number of agencies who are working with us on the kinds of support that we'll need to provide to people depending on the needs of those families that are allocated, and that includes things like English language support, should that be necessary, and so on, so that we've mapped out everything that is needed. So we expect in the next few weeks to be in a position to be welcoming people to the library.
Thank you. Can I make one last comment, Chair? The very, very last comment. I did want some good news. Here we go. The kitchen and bathroom contract. I can tell you, I've found it very difficult to find a tenant who is dissatisfied with the work carried out thus far on that contract. I did want to say to you.
No, actually moved as well.
There you are. There you are.
Sunday, yeah.
I just want to end on the
Thank you.
positive
Thank you
note.
for that.
It's a pleasure.
There you go, Dave.
Thank you. There you go.
That's really great. See, yeah, thank you.
Very well, nice to end on a high. Thanks for that, Martin.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much,
Thank you.
Steph, for coming along. And we look forward to hearing from you regularly throughout the year, as usual. So
Thank you.